welcome to another one of my PHP NetBeans tutorials. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make a complete login system without the use of frameworks. So what you're going to need to do is start by loading up XAMPP and start patching MySQL. We're going to need to we're going to have to make use of the database in order to store data about a user and whether they're logged in or not. So let's load NetBeans. Taking a while. Okay, once NetBeans is loaded up, let's open up our test project. Yep. Okay. Oh, I think this is the wrong one. Here it is, my first project. That test is something else. Okay, so config file. I'm going to be using MySQL, the default MySQL. I would normally use MySQLi at least, or PDO, which are different ways of connecting to the MySQL database, a different library. But just to keep things simple, I'll keep it as MySQL for now. So we made this file a few tutorials ago, config.php. Got there the database user's root, which is default and no password for if you're using XAMPP database, and put the database as test1 db host localhost. This then connects to the database, selects the database. If it can't connect to the database, then it will die with an error message. So if I'm using index. Right, so this is just stuff I was doing last time. So require config. So we shouldn't see any message if it managed to connect successfully. So it says no message. So it didn't print the error. So we've managed to connect to the database. Right. So what we're going to want to do is we've got an index page here, which is what the user goes to when they first go to the directory that this is in. First thing I'm going to want to do is probably create a new database table that I like to call active users to keep track of who's logged in and who's not. So here, localhost and then PHP admin. Okay, test1 is the database name. Okay, users. Okay, that's stuff we were doing yesterday. Right. Not yesterday, a while ago. Okay, so I'm going to make a table called active users. So that's, you go to PHP.MyAdmin, which should be localhost/PHP.MyAdmin. Make sure you started XAMPP up. And then go into test1, which is what I've called the database, which I'm referencing in config, test1, database. And I'm going to create a new table. A new table called active_users. And this needs how many columns? Just check. Okay, it's going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. So 5 columns. I'll tell you what they are now. Once you've created the database, it then the table, it then goes to the next screen, which is saying what do you want the columns to be. So we're going to have ID, which is going to store the ID of the active user. Well, no, it's not going to be the ID of the user, but just so we can reference it individually. User, which is going to be the ID of the users, which is going to reference this users table that we've got. If you haven't already set up the users table, it is 4 columns. 4. ID, email, password, name. So here we're going to have user. That's right. So ID is going to be serial, which makes it a big int and auto increment. But I just tick these anyway just to make sure. Index primary. User is going to be a big int because it could potentially be a very big number if this users table gets very big. And that is going to be a foreign key, which is going to reference the user's ID in this table, in the users table. Next column is we're going to have session ID. A session ID is a variable that an ID that PHP always stores about a user. So that's how we can reference who is who. So that is going to be a varchar. Make it 255. It can't actually be 255 characters, but for now, just put it that varchar works by only going up to the length it needs to be. So hash, I'm going to make a hash as well, make that 255 just for now, varchar. And expires, which is going to be an integer of 11, which is going to store a timestamp of when the user expires, so we can set an expiry on how long they can be logged in without doing anything. Yeah, and once you've done that, click save, and we've now got an active users table. This, and there's the normal users table. So at the moment I've just got my email address and password, which I cannot remember what that is. I might have to reset the password. Probably test, probably. So this is database. Okay, so on the index page we're gonna have right, there we go. On the index page we're gonna have a login form. Yeah, which is just a very simple bit of a just creating a simple form, PHP. So I'm gonna go print. It probably. No, I'll just print it. Yeah. So print form tags. Give the form an ID, just for the sake of it. Login form. Okay, so in the form we're gonna need an input field. So I'm gonna put in email. They're gonna log in using their email address, and then an input field here. Type equals text. Make sure you escape the quotes, so because if I didn't escape the quote like there, it would then bugger up the string. You need to escape the quotes. Type equals text. Name is what we're going to reference it in the post data. So name's going to be email. Give it an ID as well, just in case you ever want to reference it in JavaScript. That's what I tend to do. So name blah blah blah. Print. Do a new line character here. BR tag. Do another one. Print password. Put type equals password, so that it. If you can set it as text, but then it will just be plainly visible. If you set it as a password field, it it puts them bullet points sort of dots in, so you don't see people's password if they're typing it. Yeah, I'm just gonna need a submit button as well. Password name equals password. Right, okay, now the button. Type equals submit. You can do it as an input and put the type as submit instead, but I like to use a button because it makes it easier to style in CSS, I find at least. Call it name submit button. Oh god, in spaces and random places. Okay, and it's going to say login. Yeah, the text between the login, the button tags will be the text that's displayed, and we need to end the form. Close the form tag. Right, so now should have a nice little looking. It won't look very good, but it's a login form. There we go. This is just Google Chrome's stuff. Okay. So right, we haven't set an action, so I'm going to set a method of post. You don't want to send this password through get. If you followed my earlier tutorials about get and post. Action, we're going to send it to a login .php. Now means need to create a login.php file, so go on my first project, new PHP file, login, press finish. Now it's a login form, so if is set, post, submit button. I'll just as a test do this. You submit the form. So now, how this should work is the index page should display the form. If the button is clicked, the login button, it should send the form to login.php, and if login.php picks it up as the submit button being set, it should output you submit the form. So let's just test that. Refresh the page. Eddie, it doesn't really matter what I put in here, as long as I click the button, you submit the form. Okay, so it knows it knows the form has been submitted. Okay, so now, right, we need to require the config on this page actually as well. Config.php. So now I'm requiring it on both pages. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to get the data. So in order to put a bit of protection in against someone manipulating your form, you can make sure the form has actually got the correct value set. So if not set, post email, that's what we called it, then die error. The email field was not set. Else if not set, post password. Usually, if people are using the actual form, it will always be set. But someone could manipulate, send their own form and not send through those fields. So that's what you have to be aware of. Right. So okay. So now, what we need to do is check if their password's correct. Now, I can't remember what kind of encryption I used when I made that database originally. Anyway, I'm going to use SHA-512, so I'm going to clear my password here. Yeah, I'm going to clear that. And I'm going to go on just an online SHA-512 hasher. There we go. I'm going to put in test and convert and get the hex there. Get the lowercase one. Thank you onlineconvert.com. I'm going to paste that in there. So that is now a SHA-512 of test. So my password should now be test if when I get this form working. So yeah. So now I'm going to need to write a query. So what we're going to do is query equals MySQL underscore query, select, I'm just going to select the ID, it's the quickest thing to do. Select ID from users, I think we called it. Did we call it users? Yep. ID from users where email equals blah blah blah. So where email equals I'm going to escape this string here. We're going to escape the string. Post email. You need to make sure you escape the string, because otherwise it could put SQL injection in and totally break your website. So make sure you always escape the string when putting in user data, especially if it isn't a number, because it literally can be anything if you let them put a string in. Select ID from users where email equals email and password equals right. Password equals. Now, this isn't as simple as literally putting in that, because we've hashed the password, but their password hasn't been hashed yet. So we need to hash their password here and then compare it. So the way we do this is we escape the string, because the hash algorithm could possibly somehow put in something that broke the query. So we put in hash 512 SHA-512, that's it. hash 5. In fact, it's going to be easier if I do it outside here. So the password is going to equal. I'm going to create a new variable called password. That's going to equal hash SHA-512. That's the hashing algorithm we're using. Post password. Right. So that is now hashed. So password is now going to be a hash 512 SHA-512 of password. You have to make sure you use SHA-512 because otherwise it's going to do it in a different hashing algorithm. It's going to create a different hash and the passwords will never match. So then we're going to put in password here. So I've now created a query that will select the ID from users where the email equals the email they've given and the password equals the password they've given. Now a quick way to check if this worked is we go if MySQL underscore num underscore rows. Oh, I need to put some brackets. If MySQL underscore num underscore rows query. Okay. Now that will return true if there is at least one row, because otherwise it returns 0, which will evaluate to false. So if there weren't any rows, so if there weren't any matches where the email equals the email address they're given and the password equals the password they're given, then there wouldn't be any matches and it would never get to this if statement. Well, it would get to this statement, but it would go to the else. So I'm going to put an else here and go die incorrect. In fact, we don't really want to kill it, but just for now. Error incorrect password or email address. Yeah. So if there is a row in the users table, it then means that they have logged in successfully. So basically, just for now, I'll kill it just so we can check we got it right. So login credentials correct. So let's test this. Okay, my first project. So Eddie and test. That should be the correct password. Oh, that's from. Put a C there. Stupid me. Okay. Login. Error, incorrect password email address. Oh, that's because I didn't put my email address, did I? Okay. Test. Login credentials correct. So I put in a password and an email address that matched here. So the benefit to doing it like this, rather than storing a password in plain text, is that if someone got into the database, at least all your users' passwords are protected. In this tutorial I won't show you how, but you can also provide sorts, unique sorts, and compare the sorted password with the password you got stored here, and store the sort separately, etc. That makes it even more secure. But this is just a very quick example. So now if I put in Eddie underscore impressions blah 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 and get the password wrong, so test 1, it's incorrect. Didn't succeed. Okay, what I'm going to do here is, if the details are incorrect, I'm going to send them back to the login page. That's what I'm going to do. So location, header location, dot equals index.php, exit, always put exit statement after a header. So now it should just straight redirect them if the password's wrong, or the email address. Test 1, it just redirects me now, so it just doesn't log me in. Okay, right, so I haven't actually logged in. All I've done is got the password and the username and the email address correct. I haven't actually logged in yet. So in order to log in, what we're going to do is we're going to insert a row into the active users table. So so I'm going to put a comment here saying the username and email address are correct. Okay, so I'm going to write a query here, MySQL query. Insert into active users, that table we made. So we're gonna, okay, yeah, we also need to work out the hash. That's another thing we need to do. So, in order to help get the, help making sure the user is who they say we are, we're going to generate a hash to go alongside the session ID. Yeah. So, the way we're going to do this is, the hash is going to be made up of their session ID and their user agent. But before we do this, we need to start a session, and to do this I'm going to create a file called head.inc.php. I'm not going to put the PHP because NetBeans does it automatically. No, apparently it didn't this time. Brilliant. Right, I don't know what to do. If it does this, go to properties and you can edit the extension in here manually. Like that. Now it's called header.inc.php. This file I'm going to call at the top of every single one of my pages, and this is a file that we'll use to check if they're logged in as well. So what I want to do here is we need to start a session. Right, so okay, so in PHP you call session_start to start a session. Once we start the session, we can then use session_ID to get a unique reference as to who this is. So for now, this is all we're going to do. So start. That's it for now. We don't do anything else. In fact, we should probably require the config here, so we don't have to keep requiring it on the other pages as well. For that. Right. Okay. So we start the session, and we're going to get the config. So now we can edit this page, so we just require header.inc.php. And same with the index page. So now, hopefully it shouldn't have broken anything. It's all good. So now, this header page is included on all of our other pages, apart from config, that then starts PHP session, and includes database information, so we don't have to keep including it, we only need to include header. And in the header, the reason I'm including it first before is because you're not meant to, and it can cause problems if you start a session once you've already output data to the screen. So that's why I'm going to include the header on all the pages. Yeah. So okay. So session ID. I'm going to escape it just in case it could have been changed somehow. So session_ID. Session_ID. And the hash I'm going to make using, I'm going to hash 512. Hash 512. Or hash 512. Oh, I cannot type. Okay. I'm going to escape it as well. I'm sort of nesting functions here. Right, okay. It's going to be the session ID. Session ID. In fact, I don't need to then. Yeah, I do, because I need to use somewhere else. Session ID and the remote user agent data. That contains information about. Not remote. What am I doing? Server. That contains information about the user's browser and their operating system. So we can sort of use that to try and confirm who they are. It's not foolproof, but it's better than just using the session ID. Now the I was going to say the reason I'm not using IP address is that some ISPs can change which IP address they use very often, even from submitting a form to then processing a form on a different page. So I'm not going to use the IP to validate who they are. So now I'm going to insert into active users the user ID, and we've selected the ID here, so we can then use MySQL fetch a sock to so I'm going to go user data, so MySQL fetch sock query, because that should have only returned one row. I'll make it limit 1 just in case, which means it can only return one row. So then user data equals MySQL fetch a sock query, because there's only one row, so we don't need to loop through the array. Okay, so user data, blah blah blah. Okay, so now we're gonna insert into here user session underscore ID. Is that what I've called it? I think so. Yep. Hash and expires. And values are going to be so the user, we're going to put in the user ID, so that's going to be user data ID, put in around that just to make sure it is an integer that's passed there. And because it's an integer that's been passed, shouldn't need to escape it. And it's come out of our database anyway. So user data ID, session ID, which is, we've got the safe version of it here, session ID. In fact, that needs to go. That's going to have characters around it, not just so session ID. What else? Hash. That's it. Hash again. That's already been escaped up here. And expires. Now, the way we do expires is... Okay, so we can reference the time right now using time. So I'm going to put expires equals time. If I did that, that would mean that it... because in the header I'm going to do a check to see if their session has expired yet, if they're active users. So, say if I want it to be I want their session to expire in 15 minutes time. I'm going to go time, so time expires equals time plus, and then 60 for seconds, because it's all in seconds, times 15. So that should now be 50 minutes time, because 60 seconds in a minute, so 1 minute, that's a minute, so 15 times 1 minute, 15 minutes. So that should now be in 50 minutes time. So it means so basically how I want it to work is if they're inactive for 15 minutes, the session's going to be invalid, so they'll be logged out. So I can now put expires in here. That should now insert a row saying blah blah blah. Well, it's basically storing that they're logged in. I'm then going to redirect them to our home page that you can only get on if you're logged in. I'm going to call it home.php. New file, home, include, you need to require the header file, header.inc.php. So this is the home page. I'm just going to print congratulations, you're on the home page. Now at the moment, anyone should be able to get to this page, but it should redirect us there once we've logged in. So if I'm on this page and I go edit, creations, in fact, I'll show you first. At the moment, anyone can get on the home page. That's all it is, but just by typing in their browser. But I want to make it so you can only get on there if you're logged in. So just example test login. So I've now logged in and it's redirected me to the home page. And in here it should have put a row in the active users table. Yep, so this is it. So now I've got my ID, my user ID, which should come from the users table. That's correct, my ID is 1. And session ID and the hash and when it expires, which is a timestamp, a Unix timestamp. Yeah, so that's that. So now I've logged in and I want to then make sure that you can only get on this page if you're logged in. So up here I'm going to put in a function called isLoggedIn. Function is logged in. So if I'm logged in, we're gonna make a function called isLoggedIn that will return a boolean, which is a true or false if I'm logged in or not. So the way it's going to work this out is it's going to do a query. So in here, it's going to, because the session ID is always available, we can then use this. So query. In fact, we need to recreate the hash, for example. Also, so session ID is MySQL real escape string session underscore ID. That will be the same unless they've closed the browser. What else? Hash is, we can just copy the hash from this page, from the login page. So the hash will equal SHA-512, blah blah blah. And that should be all we need to do. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to go, now we need to query the, in fact we need to put a variable here, query equals select ID from active users where session ID equals sesID and hash equals hash equals hash. Yeah, don't know why it took so long to work that one out. So select ID from active users where session ID equals session ID and hash equals hash. Okay, and then we're going to run, so if MySQL num rows, again, like we did the login code, query. We're missing something out though, that I'll explain in a second. So if that query succeeded, and it returns at least one row, then that means someone with this session ID and that has the same user agent has logged in successfully. So that means we're going to return true because they are logged in. Else, if there are no rows returned, return false because they are not logged in. Simple as that. We were unable to find them in the active users table. The thing that was missing out here is expires. So and expires. If the expiry time is greater than time, then the session is still valid because they haven't expired yet. Yeah, because the expiry time is still in the future. So if they're logged in, this is now a handy little function that we can use to check if they're logged in or not. Another thing we need to do is, if they are logged in, we need to then update their expiry time by another 15 minutes. So, if is logged in, if they're logged in, we're going to update. In fact, we need to get their user ID first. Maybe we should make this return the user ID. Yeah. So if they're logged in, I'm going to make it return the user ID. So data equals MySQL fetch a sock. Limit it to one row just in case again. Limit 1. Return data user. That will now, if they're logged in, it will return true. So we can use it like this because it won't be false. It will have data, so it will evaluate to true. And we can actually use the content of if they're logged in or not. So what I'm going to actually do is here, I'm going to go user equals is logged in. So then if user is true, we're going to then update their column, their row in the active users table. So update active users, set expires. Let's do it up here. Expires equals time plus 60 times 15. So update it by another 15 minutes. Set expires equals expires, where user equals int, to put the concatenation user. Okay, so now it will update the active user table and it will set the expiry another 15 minutes in the future, whenever they load a new page. So it's basically an inactivity check. If they're inactive, if they don't click a button or change a page within 15 minutes, then they'll be logged out because the expiry time would have passed. Yep, so that's the way that should work. So now we can check if they're logged in, and because this page is included on, because this this file header.inc is included on every page, we can then use is logged in on every page. So here in home, I can now put in if is logged in else. So if they're logged in, it will display congratulations from the welcome page. If they're not logged in, I'm going to make it display you shouldn't be here. So now if I go to the login page, oh, got a problem here, 14. So what's the problem here? What's wrong with this? Just work out why. What's wrong with this? Oh, of course. HTTP user agent. Being very, yeah, it's not user agent, it's HTTP user agent. I need to change that here as well. I should probably log out. Yeah, you can force someone to log out if you just delete their row in the active users table. So now, if I go here, you shouldn't be here because I'm not logged in. But now if I go and log in, it should recognise that I'm logged in. Congratulations, you're on the home page because I have a row in the active users table and it knows who I am and I'm logged in. If you look here at the expires time, if I refresh a page, that should change. So if I now refresh this, see that's gone up because I refreshed the page and this code here got ran and it updated the expiry time. So yeah, that's how very simple way you can check if someone's logged in or not. And that's a very simple login page. Yeah. And then so I can now create lots of pages and just put the is logged in check wherever. Yeah. I'm going to create another function called get user data, or yeah, get user, which will return an array of a user's data. Get user. I'm only going to make it work if they're logged in. So if not, or if is logged in, in fact, user equals is logged in. If user, so if the user, so if user, so if it's true, if they are logged in, If they're not logged in, I'm just going to return false because I can't get any data about them. So if they are logged in, I've now got the user ID in user, which I can use to reference the user table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this: query equals MySQL query select. So I want to select the where's the user table? Here it is. I'm going to select the email, the password, and the name. So email. In fact, I don't need password. Just name. Just email and name. Just email and name from users, where ID equals int user. And now I can go return MySQL fetch sock query. That should now return an array of the user's email and name, which I should then be able to use on this page. So if they're logged in, I can then go user equals get user, like that. Now I can use this data and go congratulations user name, because it's an associative array, and I can reference it using its column, which is that. So now, if I refresh the page, it should say congratulations Eddie. Congratulations Eddie, you're on the home page. So we've now been able to log in a user, check if they're logged in, and get information about the user, and then use it in the code. So obviously, if I was logged in as Donald, it would then say Donald instead. So to log in as Donald, I'm going to set it to the same password, so because I know that this hash here is test. So if I now delete my active user and then refresh this page, I'm no longer logged in. I shouldn't be here. If I then go to the index page and log in as Donald at gmail.com, and his password is also test, congratulations Donald, you're on the home page, because it's now registered my active user with a different user ID, and it's now referencing this column, this row in the users table. So it's now using Donald. So there you have it. And I can put in brackets his email address, like this. I can go user email. Congratulations Donald at gmail.com, you're on the home page. Hey. Yeah. So if I then left my browser for 15 minutes, it would then log me out if I didn't refresh. If I keep refreshing the page, though, it keeps incrementing, not incrementing, just making sure that the expiry date is 15. The expiry time is 15 minutes in the future. If I change that again, see, it keeps updating. But if I left that 15 minutes, it would then automatically log me out. A way that you can change this, you can set this to 30 and it'd be 30 minutes, or 15, or 5 or 1 if you wanted lots. If you wanted, I don't know, it's up to you. You can set 120, that's 2 hours. Of course, if you don't want an expiry time, you could just not put in the expiry column and just not bother with it, and you'd have to edit. All you'd have to do is take out that query, that part of this where clause, and you'd have to change it here, and that's basically it. It's quite easy to edit. So yeah, that's a very simple system. About logging out, what I can do is here on the login page, because I include header, I can then only display the login form if they're not logged in. So what I should probably do here is go if not is logged in. If they're not logged in, display the login form. In fact, this is the wrong page. What am I doing? Wrong page. It's on the index page. Yeah. So if not is logged in. If they're not logged in, If they're not logged in, we want the login form to display. Otherwise, let's print a logout form. ID equals logout form. Method equals post. Action equals PHP. And all this form is going to be is a button that just says logout for now. So button, logout, type equals submit. So that is just going to be a simple logout form. So I'm still logged in, so if I go to the index page, it should now just say a logout button. I'll probably put a little header here and here as well. Just h2 login. So I can click that, but it will just send me to login form, but it won't do anything. I didn't give this a name, did I? So name equals logout button. ID equals logout button. Login. So if is log. I'm just going to put this same if statement here, because we don't want people trying to log in if they've already logged in, which they could do if they submit their own form here. Else, so if they are logged in and we want to check for the if set post log out button. Why is it called submit button? Did I really call it that? Must have. Okay, log out button. So if the log out button is set, then all we need to do here is delete from the users table, the active users table. So here I'm going to go user equals is logged in. In fact, I'm just going to add here get user. I'm going to add the ID as well. That'd be useful. And then I can go get user. So if the logout button is set, I've got the user. I can reference the ID using that user variable. So I'm going to go MySQL query delete from active users where user equals int user ID, because I can get that because of get user. I've got the user ID. Once they're logged out, I'm going to send them back to the login page, which is on the index page. Exit. So now, if they press the logout button and they're logged out and they're logged in already, it will then get the user information. It will then delete their row in the active users table, which is what logging them out is, and then it will redirect them to the index page back to the login screen. So if I'm on this page, I currently see the logout button. I click log out, and it redirects me to the login page, and then I can log in again, and my row is gone from the active users table, and I'm logged out again. So now if I go to the home page, it will say you shouldn't be here. Ha ha ha. So yeah, that is a simple but effective login system, PHP, without the use of any frameworks. I haven't showed in this tutorial. I haven't showed a register page. It's quite easy to do. I'll probably do that next time. Yeah, the way this is sort of how I tend to go about doing it is have a file that you can include in every page, and then you save yourself a lot of work having to rewrite code because it's included already. You don't have to. And I was able to get the user data and all this. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this tour. I hope you thought it was useful, and thanks for watching.